All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and our latest BCBA practice exam. This is going to be mock exam 6. As always, we'll go through a set of questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including all of our other mocks, plus study guides and everything else. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Number 1. Every time George orders fries, Elaine eats half of the fries off his plate. George decides he is going to add oregano to his fries to deter Elaine from stealing his fries. Now, when George adds oregano, Elaine does not steal fries, but Elaine does steal fries if there is no oregano. What goal of science is described? So this is a goal of science question, clearly. And our goals of science include description, prediction, and control. But as always, before we get to our answer choices, we have to understand what the question is asking. We always want to do all of our work up front. So we know George orders fries. Elaine eats half of the fries off his plate. George decides, I will add oregano to my fries to stop Elaine from stealing the fries. So when George adds oregano, Elaine does not steal, but Elaine does steal if there is no oregano. What has George done? What goal of science has George accomplished? So when we think about description, prediction, and control, description is kind of the lowest order of magnitude, right? With description, all you're doing is describing what happened. This would be George just saying, Elaine eats my fries. He's describing the occurrence. He's not making a hypothesis. He's not experimenting with anything. He's describing the occurrence. A prediction is now you're trying to make a hypothesis. You're trying to identify possible correlations. A prediction would be George saying, Elaine eats my fries. If I add something like oregano, she won't. A prediction, you're not actually manipulating anything, but you're predicting what might occur, or you're trying to identify possible correlations. With control, now we're actually manipulating variables. George is now actively manipulating the oregano he adds to his fries. As a result, he's starting to establish some sort of functional control over Elaine's behavior. When he adds oregano, Elaine doesn't steal fries. When he doesn't, Elaine does. So George is now going through all the steps and he's establishing some sort of control or functional control, experimental control over Elaine's behavior. So again, description would just be describing what's happening. Prediction, you're starting to identify and predict correlations. Control, you're actually manipulating and experimenting. 2, Fogel's parents go out of town and leave Fogel home alone. Fogel throws a party for all his friends and one of his friends ends up breaking a lamp. When his parents get home, Fogel tries to explain that the lamp broke for no reason at all. Fogel is violating what assumption? So this is one of the driving assumptions that as a behavior analyst, you've got to avoid at all costs because you're going to hear it all the time. Well, that behavior happens for no reason at all. This happened for no reason at all. I don't know why it happened. It happens randomly. It happens out of the blue. There's no clear antecedent. I don't know why it occurs. We know that's just not true. Why? Well, because the universe is lawful, it's orderly, things happen for a reason. So when Fogel says, well, the lamp broke for no reason, what assumption was he violating? A, empiricism. Well, empiricism is saying we are observing what is going on. We're making judgments based on observation. Fogel is not necessarily discrediting or violating empiricism because he's not saying I saw this happen. He's just saying, well, it happened for no reason at all. There's no explanation, which is B, determinism. When you say there's no reason at all, there's no explanation, you're violating determinism because everything is determined. Things happen for a reason. We know there are antecedents, there are consequences. Changes in the environment lead to outcomes. Fogel saying there's no reason at all is making the claim that there is no determinism, which we know is false. What about experimentation? Well, Fogel and his parents aren't experimenting on anything, so he's not violating nor is he engaging in experimentation. And then philosophical doubt. Philosophical doubt might occur if his parents turned around and said, well, I'm not sure we trust your reasoning. Philosophical doubt is questioning perceived truths and outcomes. Fogel's not doing that. He's simply saying, well, I don't know why it happened. I didn't see it. I just think it happened for no reason at all. And we know when you do that, you're violating determinism. Things happen for a reason. 3, when the girl he has a crush on walks by, Jared's heart starts beating faster. One day, Jared was listening to Call Me Maybe on Spotify and his crush walked by. Now, when Jared hears the song Call Me Maybe, his heart starts beating faster. Call Me Maybe is considered a what? So first, let's look at what type of question this is, because you should be able to identify respondent behavior questions pretty easily. You probably won't see a ton of respondent behavior questions because as analysts, we don't deal in respondent behavior. It's typically operant behavior more often than not, but you might see a few, at least to have an understanding. So if Jared's heart starts beating, is that a reflex or a response? What's a reflex? And when we do reflexes like heart rates and sneezing and sweating and blinking, we know it's going to be some sort of respondent question. So in this case, girl he has crush on walks by, Jared's heart starts beating. So let's map it out. Girl he has crush on walks by is the unconditioned stimulus, right? Which causes his heart to start beating, which is the unconditioned reflex. Then Jared was listening to Call Me Maybe, which would have been a neutral stimulus, but then his crush walked by. So the unconditioned stimulus was then paired with the neutral stimulus, because now when Jared hears the Call Me Maybe song, his heart starts beating faster, which is the conditioned reflex. So Call Me Maybe is going to be considered a conditioned stimulus because it's being paired with the unconditioned stimulus. And if you can write that out and break it down like that, respondent questions become very straightforward. Identify what are my unconditioned stimulus and reflexes? What's my neutral stimulus? And then what is the question asking? That's the big part. What are they asking about? Because they could be asking about the girl. They could be asking about the heart. What they're asking about is the song. Prior to the pairing, the song was nothing. It was neutral. Then the unconditioned stimulus got paired with it, making it a conditioned stimulus, leading to this conditioned reflex of heart starting beating faster. Call Me Maybe is considered a conditioned stimulus. A preschool teacher hands one of her learners a green bear and says, go put it in the green bucket, and the learner does. How would the learner demonstrate symmetry? So stimulus equivalence, let's think reflexivity, symmetry, transitivity. What are those three things? Because whenever you see a definition or a term, let's go ahead and define that, right? In our heads, get a good idea of what we're working with. Well, with reflexivity, that's simply identical matching, right? A equals A, B equals B. Symmetry is going to be mirrored. So A equals B, B equals A. And we're looking at symmetry. So if green bear, right, hands the green bear and says, put it in the green bucket. Green bear would be A, green bucket would be B. How are we going to demonstrate symmetry? Well, we need to be able to reverse that and mirror it. So B has to equal A. A, by matching the green bear to another green bear. Well, that would be reflexivity, right? That would be A equals A. B, by putting the green bear in the green bucket. They're already doing that. Symmetry, we have to be able to mirror, okay, the A equals B relationship. C, by putting the green bucket on the green bear. Good, because in the question, we go A to B. In answer C, we're going B to A. That would be symmetry. And then D, by putting the green bear on the green table. Now, that would either be maybe another form of symmetry. That might be even a form of transitivity. We're not really sure. All we know is there's no green bucket. We're looking for A equals B, then B equals A. The answer choice that represents that is C, by putting the green bucket on the green bear. Now, you can see questions 3 and 4. You probably want to do a little doodling, right, and marking down these variables. There's not a lot of questions you're going to want to do that necessarily, but if it helps, you're going to have time, okay? And so stimulus equivalence questions are another one of those where you want to identify what's my A, what's my B, what's my C, and then kind of go from there. 5, for which of the following scenarios would rate be the most appropriate form of measurement? Now, this is an interesting question, all right? It seems like a pretty easy measurement question, right? A continuous question about rate. Rate is just frequency over time. But there are some stipulations as to when rate should and shouldn't be used. Because with continuous measurement, remember, we're expecting to get the most accurate data. So the question is asking when would rate be the most appropriate, meaning some of these might not be appropriate. So A, drinks consumed during a 3-hour football tailgate party. One thing with rate is you want the behavior to only be controlled, essentially, by the learner. In other words, if the frequency can be controlled by somebody else, rate's going to be inaccurate. However, drinks consumed during a 3-hour football tailgate party, more or less, this person is going to be controlling how much they drink, right? Because they're going to be choosing or picking up or drinking as much as they would like. It's not really under the control of somebody else necessarily based on this information. B, however, flashcards answered during a tutoring session. Tutoring, if we have flashcards and we're running flashcards, the person can only answer as many flashcards as they're presented. So if I'm only giving you 5 flashcards at a time, well, my rate's going to be limited to 5. Or if I'm not giving you flashcards quick enough, again, my rate's going to be limited. So with something like flashcards answered during a tutoring session, where these flashcards are dependent on this tutor presenting them, it's going to be a little dicey to use rate because it's so dependent on not the learner, not the learner's behavior, but somebody else's behavior. And then C, playing in a 2-hour soccer game would violate the idea that you shouldn't use rate for a long, continuous event. Playing in a 2-hour soccer game, where's the rate, right? The game is 2 hours. We're playing. What's our frequency? Okay. Again, we're only using the information presented here, right? So you can't just add information to it. We know the tutor, during a tutoring session, there's flashcards, and that's going to be controlled by the tutor. Playing in a 2-hour soccer game, where's the rate? What are we going to be measuring with rate in a 2 hour of playing that we could get duration, right? It's going to be hard to get some sort of frequency out of C. On long continuous events, rate can be difficult. So the best answer is going to be A, drinks consumed during a 3-hour football tailgate party, because you'll be controlling each time you get a new drink. 6, read the following behavior definition. Headbutting is any instance of the learner making contact with another person's body with any part of their head. Intensity of impact is not relevant. Headbutting is not making contact with non-human stimuli. Making contact with non-human stimuli is considered what? So we've got a behavior definition here. And what are we looking at? We're looking at making contact with non-human stimuli. So if we read through this, we've got our definition. And then it says headbutting is not making contact with non-human stimuli. So what will we consider that? Well, we consider that a non-example. And you want to try to include non-examples, especially when it comes to topography, because topography can be very misleading. In this case, we're looking essentially at headbutting another human. Headbutting making contact with non-human stimuli is not what we're looking for. And that non-example is very important for your technicians. The non-examples are really important pieces of behavior definitions. Example of magnitude, well, magnitude would be intensity. We're not necessarily saying the intensity. Intensity of impact is not relevant, is mentioned, but that's not what the question is asking about. And what the question is asking about is not talking about intensity. And then C, unnecessary in a behavior definition. Well, no, non-examples are really important. You want to include them as much as possible. So not making contact with non-human stimuli is considered a non-example. This is what it isn't. This is what it doesn't look like. 7, you, a behavior analyst, are assigned a team of behavior technicians who work in a public school. It is your job to design behavior plans for the classroom. You instruct your technicians to put vocal self-stimulatory behavior on extinction, but the classroom teacher instructs his technicians to redirect the behavior instead. What should you do? Okay, long question. Don't panic on the long questions with a lot of words and a lot of ideas. Attack it like anything else. We're going to slow down. We're going to do all our work in the question. So you're a behavior analyst. You have a team of techs who work in school. It is your job to design behavior plans for the classroom. You tell them to put a behavior on extinction. The teacher says, redirect the behavior instead. So this is truthfully a collaboration question. Working as a team, and collaboration is a huge part of the new ethical code, right? We have to collaborate with other members of our team. So as the analyst, this teacher is telling them to do, the technicians to do something you told them not to do. So what do you do as the analyst? A, tell your technicians to follow your instructions and to tell the teacher to contact you if there are issues. Not necessarily, right? Because the classroom teacher, that's still her environment, right? And we have to respect her environment. We've got to respect her as a member of the team. So just saying, well, and then putting your technicians in a position where they're just going to disobey your orders and the school's orders is not a good idea. A is not a good answer. B, tell your technicians to comply with whatever the teacher tells them to do. Well, with B, you're just throwing in the towel. Okay. as an analyst, maybe you do believe extinction is the best approach. Just because the teacher says something else, they might not know any better. They might want help. You don't know the situation. Just saying, we'll follow the teacher blindly, again, is a little neglectful. C, request that the technicians are removed from the school unless ABA principles are followed. Well, no, that's part of collaboration. We follow ABA principles. We're conceptually systematic, but our team members don't necessarily need to be. And so D, attempt to arrange a meeting with the classroom teacher to discuss options. That's best. You try your best to set up a meeting, and this can be very hard for new analysts, but it's a huge part of your job to collaborate. And you try your best to set up a meeting and discuss why you think extinction is best and figure out what can you do. And then from there, you make further decisions. But you don't want to make decisions until you've talked with the teacher and attempted to collaborate. So what should you do? Attempt to arrange a meeting with the classroom teacher to discuss options. Every Christmas Eve, Juan's parents tells him he must stay in bed until his clock reads 6 a.m. or else Santa won't be able to deliver his presents. As soon as Juan's clock reads 6 a.m., Juan runs downstairs to see what Santa brought. Juan's clock displaying 6 a.m. is a what for Juan running downstairs. So we've got some sort of motivating operation, discriminative stimulus, consequence question. Now, we want to be very careful in these type of questions and consequence and antecedent questions to identify what is the question asking about. The question is asking about the clock displaying 6 a.m. relative to Juan running downstairs. That's what we're looking for here. We know it's Christmas Eve. Juan's parents say you have to stay in bed until the clock reads 6 a.m. or Santa won't be able to deliver his presents. So as soon as Juan's clock reads 6 a.m., what does Juan do? He runs downstairs. So that 6 a.m. is evoking this behavior of Juan running downstairs. So we know it's going to be some sort of antecedent. Now, is it a motivating operation? Well, no, because the motivation is already there. The value going downstairs is already there. The clock reading 6 a.m. doesn't change the value. What does it do? It signals now reinforcement is available running downstairs because his parents had this rule where you have to stay in bed until the clock reads 6 a.m. or Santa won't be able to deliver his presents. So the rule established 6 a.m. reinforcement is available. Before 6 a.m., reinforcement is not available. And so the clock signaled the consequence was available, making it a discriminative stimulus. There is no prompt in this particular question, and it's not a consequence, it's an antecedent. It evoked the behavior. So Juan's clock displaying 6 a.m. signaled that running downstairs was now going to be reinforced, making it a discriminative stimulus. 9, which of the following is not a recommended strategy for conducting a task analysis? So task analyses, if you follow my videos, you've probably seen a question similar to this before. Very important to understand task analyses and the complexities within them. And so we're looking for a strategy that is not recommended. Again, those keywords, not recommended. A, observe someone competent performing the task. Is that not recommended? Well, it is recommended. That's one of the better ways to conduct a task analysis. B, perform the task yourself. Another good way to do it. Perform the task yourself is a solid strategy as long as you're competent, right? And most of the things you're teaching, you probably will be. C, observe someone of the same age as your learner performing the task. Now, why would this be a bad idea? Well, if you got a 5-year-old you're teaching to dress themselves, and you just take another 5-year-old, they might not be competent at all. They might not be able to dress themselves. So age isn't much of a factor. You're looking for skill level. You're looking for developmental level. You're looking for competence. So we're looking for not. That not is such a key word. What is not a recommended strategy? Well, observing someone of the same age as your learner performing the task. And then 10, you are recording instances of nail biting as part of a self-stimulatory behavior assessment. You're taking partial interval data on nail biting for 20 seconds per interval for 5 intervals. During interval 1, your client bites their nails twice. Interval 2, they don't bite their nails. Interval 3, they bite their nails 6 times. And then they don't bite their nails in interval 4 and 5. How many responses would you record? Long question. Let's slow down and understand what we're given. We're looking for how many responses. And what are we measuring? We're measuring self-stimulatory behavior, nail biting, and we're using partial interval data. So we know we're using a discontinuous measurement procedure, and we're doing it for 5 intervals. And so how many responses or occurrences do you record per interval when using partial or momentary or whole interval data? Well, 1. So the max responses we can record are 5, because you can only record 1 per 5 per each interval, because you're only taking data per interval. And the intervals are lasting 20 seconds. So you've got to know all this information, okay, to answer this question. So interval 1, your client bites their nails twice. So did it occur? Yes. Remember, partial interval, if it occurs, it counts, no matter how long it lasts. So we have 2 occurrences in interval 1. How many responses is that? Well, that's 1. Interval 2, they don't bite their nails, so no occurrences. Interval 3, they bite their nails 6 times. How many responses? 1, so we're up to 2. And then they don't bite their nails in interval 4 and 5, so 0. How many responses are you going to record? Well, 2 responses of nail biting. Again, this isn't necessarily the most difficult question in the world, but if you're moving quick, you're rushing, you're just trying to get through it, it's very easy to slip up on this question, because you've got to understand a lot of different parts before you can answer it. But if you did what we did and did all your work up front, okay, partial interval, 20 seconds, 5 intervals, and then break it down, it becomes much simpler. Awesome. That's part 1. As always, part 2 will be coming next week, or if you're watching this in the future, it might already be available. Make sure you check at the end of the video if it is or isn't. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our other mock exam study guides and everything else. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.